Alrighty. Hi, folks. How we doing? Looks like we still got some people kind of coming in here. So thanks for joining me today. Excited to talk about another new product that we've released in our Bluetooth product line here. Just close this and let's get started here. So today we're going to talk about our new HOBO MX multi-channel data loggers. Basically another couple new loggers to our Bluetooth product line. This is being recorded, so if you want to listen to me over and over again, you can. Or if you happen to miss this, the recording will be available afterwards. I do like to kind of keep this a little light, so if questions as they come up as I'm talking here, please feel free to type those in, and I'll try to address them as we go. And we'll just kind of go from there. And you know, if the question's relevant at the time, I'll answer it. If not, we'll answer the questions at the end. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to take a look at an overview, a tour of the logger, the measurements that are available now, specifications. We're going to talk a little about the self-describing sensors, and then how we connect up to some of the third-party sensors that the Onset sells. I want to take a look at the mobile apps and introduce you to a new Android app. And then, you know, as I went through the attendee list last night, I realized that we really have a wide variety of people who signed up for this webinar. So I kind of wanted to take a step back and just really look at the different families of loggers in the Bluetooth options now, because I want to make you aware of for some of the more rugged environments that some folks are in. And then talk a little about the gateway and how that works with our cloud called HOBOlink. And of course, as I said, questions, feel free to send those along as we go, and we can kind of go from there. So what is a multi-channel data logger? So basically we have two loggers that we're introducing. The first one is an MX1104. And it has the ability to record temperature, relative humidity, and light levels. And then you can plug in an external sensor for an additional input. Some of you may be aware of the older product called the U12-012. This is finally its replacement. So for folks who are I know working in museums and things along those lines, this is going to be a good logger here for you. And then we have our other logger, which is called the MX1105, which gives you a lot more flexibility because you have 4 inputs that you can connect up to a wide variety of sensors. And you know what we found over the years is that this logger gets designed in for a wide variety of applications and uses. No sound. Can you hear me now? Can anybody else hear me out there? Can I get a yes or a no? Just hit the questions thing for me. Yes, 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 yes. Okay. All right. Thank you. Geez, I think y'all answered. Okay. Thanks. Matt, I'm not sure what was happening there, but it looks like everybody else can hear me. So thank you. All right. Let's move on to the next one here. We'll move on here on the slides. That was funny. That was a great reaction. Thank you, everybody. So looking at the Bluetooth, you know, what are the advantages of this? Obviously, you know, if you're familiar with USB loggers, you got to walk up to them. You got to plug in something. You need to download and that sort of stuff. So with the Bluetooth, you have about 100-foot communication range. The advantage of Bluetooth Low Energy is that it allows us to be battery operated. It's very low current draw when the logger is working. And like your traditional older Bluetooth, like the old earpieces that you had, there's no syncing, there's no pairing to these devices. So as soon as you open up the app, everything that's within range, you'll be able to then basically connect to the loggers. So it definitely gives you a lot of flexibility here. So let's take kind of an exploded view look of the loggers and what we have going on here. So you have 4 screws that hold the logger together. You have your AAA batteries that are user replaceable. There's a gasket in here. One of the things that we've done, and I'll explain this in a little bit, but it has an IP54 rating, which means that it's splash proof. On the back of this, it comes with rare earth magnets, so you can stick it to a metal surface, or there's mounting tabs on the side where you can either use zip ties or Velcro or things along those lines. And then across the bottom is where you plug in your sensors. And then we have, of course, the RH, the light, and the temperature sensor there. And then a large LCD, and I'll kind of go through and the LCD in some detail here in terms of what details that provides for you. Really, what this product line does is it expands the amount of measurements that you can now record with the Bluetooth loggers. Before, we could pretty much only do temperature, humidity, and CO2, and now we're able to add in light intensity and a lot of these sensors that connect into the external ports, like AC current and voltage and air velocity and differential pressure. So a lot of flexibility, and of course, you know, if there's a measurement up here that you don't see and you have a sensor that has a 4 to 20 milliamp output or a DC voltage output, you'd be able to use those adapter cables and connect them up to this logger as well. So it definitely gives you some flexibility here. One of the new things that we're also adding to this product line is something called self-describing sensors. So some of our sensors, you will be able to just plug these right into the logger, and the logger will automatically know that you have a 0 to 50 amp current transformer now plugged into it. So you don't need to set the ranges and things along those lines. So really, I see this as being not only a time-saving step, but also a lot of times our tech support folks, somebody will scale something differently, and then we need to help them manipulate the data to get the correct scaling in place. So taking a look at some of the key features, obviously the wireless communications. This logger is using the Bluetooth Low Energy 5. The self-describing sensors that I just talked about. There's an audible alarm on this. So if something goes outside of range, it'll beep at you. Also, if your sensors are not connected correctly, it will beep at you. Christopher, this one's for you. It is compatible with existing sensors that you may already have. So all of your non-self-describing sensors for the U12s or the UX series, they're known as TMCs and CTVs by their part numbers. Those are compatible with this logger. You'll just need to take the extra steps to scale that data or select the appropriate temperature probe or current transformer that you have connected to it. So yes, you do not need to go buy all new sensors, although I wouldn't mind if you did. You do have the ability, exactly. Nobody wants to have to go out and buy all new sensors just to work with a new logger. And that was one of our goals. We realized that many of you have boxes upon boxes upon boxes of sensors that you've been using for years. But as you move forward, consider looking at the self-describing sensors. Personally, I love them. It really just it's a no-brainer when you plug it in and it just works. There's something to be said about that. Sorry, yes, that does include the old 4 to 20 milliamp cable and the old, cable adapt for the DC voltage as well. So any of those old cables that that plugged in, and even the old CO2 that worked with the older Telair sensor. All of those are going to plug in. Again, the splash proof rating, which is IP54, you get to see the current readings on the LCD. It can store a whopping 1.9 million measurements. So a lot of things, and basically that's divided among the channels that you have active. So if you have all 4 channels running, that's 1.9 million divided by 4, or you can allocate all of that to just one particular reading. It has 16-bit accuracy, and I'll put that into real numbers for you in a couple slides. It has flexible start, stop, and restart options, very similar to our UX product line, but you can start it on a push button, start it at a delayed start, start it at the next interval. You can stop it at a particular time, and you can actually restart it through the push button as well. There are multiple logging modes where you can do something called statistics, where it will record the min, max, and average over your logging interval. It runs off of 2 AA batteries, and that's rated to run for a year at a 1-minute logging interval. And then finally, there's user upgradable firmware. Occasionally, we either have to push a fix out, or sometimes we enhance the loggers, and you're able to do that over the air through the mobile app. So taking a look at the specs in a little more detail, what does that 16-bit accuracy actually mean? So on the temperature side, we're plus or minus 0.2 degrees C or 0.36 degrees Fahrenheit. For the relative humidity between 10 to 90%, the accuracy is plus or minus 2.5%. The light intensity reading is plus or minus 10%. Now this covers the range of what the human eye sees. So it does not get into UV. That's something that we actually do not have the capable of doing. And then in terms of the input adapters, this accuracy is the same as the UX120 if you happen to be using that, and it's much improved accuracy if you're using the older U12 loggers. And then finally, the environmental rating, and I'm going to touch on this when we look at some of the other products as well. It's basically going to protect it from dust and protect it from splashing water in any direction. So you can hit it with a hose. You can, if it's in a spray down situation. What you're probably not going to want to do is leave it out on your deck for about 6 months in rainstorms and all that sort of things, and have water puddle up on it. And I don't recommend doing that. That's what I did, and you can kill the logger that way. But we do have alternatives that are more rugged, which I want to talk about later on in the presentation. So just keep in mind, it is more rugged than our normal 1101 temperature and humidity, but it's not completely weatherproof or waterproof. Just looking at the logger in a little more detail here, you have the RH sensor, your light sensor is here, your temperature sensor comes out the bottom, and the analog input goes here. On the back, you have the rare earth magnets, and you have the top and bottom button, which I'll describe that functionality in just a second. And then on the 1105, obviously both of these have the LCD screen, and then the self-describing sensor. These ship with plugs, so if you're not taking advantage of all 4 channels, or even on the 1104, if you're not using that one channel, leave that plug in there, and that's going to help keep the IP54 rating. And then finally, there's mounting loops where you can use zip ties or Velcro to mount the logger. This is everything that the LCD can do. So it's a little overwhelming at first, but it's going to give you some information here. So at the top, Depending upon which channel you're on, it's going to tell you if you have an external sensor problem or if your logger, that particular channel, may be in an alarm state. The main sensor readings are on the large 7-segment displays here. The indication will show up if you're in a start, stop, or restart, telling you to hold down the button. We're going to show you how much memory has been used, as well as if the data logger has wrapped. We have an indication that the logger is actually logging. The degrees for relative humidity and the percent sign for Fahrenheit and degrees C. If you're using statistics logging, you can scroll through the different statistics. And then the 3 characters here, these will allow you to put in your own engineering units. So if you want to scale it to something called zip, you can put that in there if you so choose. The bottom button allows you to scroll through your statistics as well as clear the alarm. There is a countdown if you're doing a delayed start. And then the top button, this is mainly used to do a push button start or stop, or allows you to scroll through each of the channels. A little bit of the change here on this is that we don't show all 4 channels at once on one screen. You need to use a push button to go through the different channels to see the readings there. And finally, we give you the battery level here. So taking a look at the self-describing sensors, again, they have electronics built right into the sensor, so that the logger will automatically know what's being plugged into it. Over here on the right is kind of a screenshot of a logger that currently does not have anything connected into it. It looks like it had a temperature sensor previously. And then when I plug in a sensor, it automatically knew that I plugged in a 20 amp CT. So your current transformer, so your scaling is automatically set, and basically you're up and running. So, you know, again, they work with the old sensors, but you know, if you do have the advantage to take a look at the new sensors, you know, there's definitely some time-saving features here, especially if you're deploying a lot of sensors with the 4-input logger as well. Now, one of the other things we added in here, many of you had mentioned that there was concerns when on the older products that sometimes the jack would come unloose, you know, especially if there's some weight on there or you weren't completely sure that they were plugged in. So what we've done here is added a locking mechanism. And this also helps keep the IP54 rating too. But you plug it in at a 45-degree angle and then turn it, and basically the flat top of the sensor will be face up, and that essentially kind of locks the sensor into place, so it won't wiggle out. If you're carrying the logger and let's say you had a 3 or 4 current transformers hanging off of it, it's not going to plug out there. Yeah, that's a good point, Leland. You know, he likes the lock, but it's a little scary the first time you plug it in. You feel like you're going to break it. And that's true. It's a snug fit, I will say. It's not as loose as those headphone jacks. So again, when you go to plug these in, just take a look at it. These instructions are in the manual here, but just turn that and you're going to see that notch that's on the sensor itself, and that lines up right with the logger. And then as you push it in, it's going to go all the way in until it stops and then turn it to the right. So it's definitely a snug fit. But again, we did that for a specific reason, to make sure that, you know, these things aren't going to fall out. So what did we make into a self-describing sensor? So basically we turned these guys in. So all of our thermistor temperature probes. So we had the rounded stainless steel tip that was in lengths of 1, 6, 20, and 50 feet. We have the flat mount surface temperature, which is available in 6 feet. And then we have the stabber probe. that is available in 6 feet cable length, but it has a 4-inch stainless steel stabber at the end of that, and that's also food grade. And then we have our 5 CTs ranging from 20 amps all the way up to 600 amps. And then we have our voltage input cables, which again, there's 4 different models there going from 2.5 volts up to 24 volts. And then finally the 4 to 20 milliamp input cable. Now those last 2 cables that I talked about will connect up to the third-party sensors that we resell. Now in the software, there will be a drop-down list and you can select the appropriate range, very similar to if you were using HOBOware before. You'll just go in and say that, okay, I'm, differential air pressure, I'm going to be recording 0 to 1 inch water column. You tap on that. So that's the one thing. The self-describing sensors for the voltage input and the 4 to 20 milliamp get you halfway there. So they tell you that you've got a voltage input, and then from there it shows the appropriate sensors that are compatible with the voltage input, and you can select from those. So we kind of pare down that huge list that we've had in the past within the software. So it should make it a little easier. Yeah, Chris, good question. Are the new sensors compatible with the old loggers? They are not. So what has changed? The jacks look the same, but the electronics have kind of changed. If you look at the tip of the old sensors, there's 2 rings around them on the metal part. There's 3 of them on this one, and basically that extra ring allowed us to do the self-describing here. So even though I've plugged in old sensors and they do plug in, I've plugged in new sensors to the old logger, sometimes they look like they work, 9 times out of 10 they don't. So I would not plug your new sensors, the self-describing sensors, into the older UX loggers or U-series loggers. Even though they fit, I can't guarantee they're going to work. This is just more compatibility. It gives you part numbers and which goes. It's more of just a reference thing here. This will all be spelled out on our website, but basically what we're showing here is that, yes, you can either use the self-describing sensor or the older adapt cables. If you needed excitation power, you would use that AC power sensor. And then, with the different types of sensors that and the different model numbers that we support here. So let's take a look at the mobile app. We'll start first with Apple, iOS. In the App Store, you are going to search up HOBO Mobile, which that's been out now for about 6 years or so. In the Android store, Google Play, we are getting ready to release a new app, something called HOBO Connect. So if you're currently using HOBO Mobile for Android and you're going to work with these 2 new loggers, you do need to move over to the HOBO Connect app. There's a couple reasons why we did this. I won't go into a ton of detail, but essentially the experience on HOBO Mobile, sometimes folks had some issues, whether it's connecting long distances, and basically we redeveloped from ground up, started over, built a new foundation, and honestly, the HOBO Connect for Android now works almost as seamlessly as what HOBO Mobile for iOS does. So you Android users out there, stay tuned. Next Tuesday, this will be available in the App Store. And it will be compatible with all of the existing Bluetooth loggers, except for pH and water level out of the gates. And there'll be a follow-on release for that. So stay tuned. We'll be getting information up on the website in terms of compatibility charts and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, that's what's coming out next week. Now, for those who may not be familiar with HOBO Mobile or the apps, it's pretty straightforward. And I'm just going to kind of step through some screenshots here. But you fire up the app, and when you go into the main devices screen, it's going to show all of the loggers that are within range. To connect to any of them, you just tap on them, and then that brings you to what's called a connected screen. And at this point, it gives you the ability to initially configure your logger, set up all of your parameters, your logging rate. You're going to name the logger, any alarm parameters that you may want to set. And then this is also where you would stop your logger, read it out, view the logger status. And then on many of our loggers, we have this cool little page feature where you can really kind of annoy your coworkers, and you can beep the logger, beep the little alarm on it at will. It's kind of fun. But yeah, and it's kind of helpful too if you happen to have misplaced a logger and you can't find it. That page button actually has come in handy from time to time. Of course, I jumped ahead. So as you go through the configuring, you can set up the intervals, the notifications. You can set up groups. I found using the groups actually is, there's a lot more benefit now if you're working with the gateway, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. And then again, your ability to set the different start and stop options. And based upon your logging interval and based upon the memory that's in the logger, it will tell you how long the logger will actually record for. And then finally, when you download it, you're going to get a graph of what's happened over that period of time. And you have the ability to zoom in by using hand gestures. So you pinch to zoom, you double tap to zoom out. If you hold your finger down on one of the traces on the graph, it actually brings up what we call like a crosshair tool. So it'll show you the time as well as what those readings were. Sorry, something just came across here. So yeah, so basically, and then from here, you're going to want to share your data. And you have the ability to share that to an XLS file, a CSV, a text, a HOBO file, which you can work with in HOBOware, or you can send yourself an image. And there's a couple ways you can do that. You can select multiple files at once in HOBO Mobile on the iOS, and then as we move into HOBO Connect on Android, we're actually taking advantage of the file system, so you can actually dive right down and share those files easily, whether you want to upload them to Dropbox or Google Drive or OneDrive or all these sort of other things there. So I'd like to just take a step back here and look at the product line as a whole. Again, as I was looking at folks who had registered for this, there's certainly some loggers that you may want to consider that Onset has defined as an outdoor logger or a water logger. And that's mainly due to how rugged the products are. So I just want to step through these for a minute or so here, just to give you a good understanding and why you might want to consider using some of these other loggers. Now, of course, we have the first two loggers here in the 1101 and 1102, and these are truly rated not waterproof. You shouldn't get them wet. They're dust proof, but at the end of the day, these are happy in indoor, non-rainy environments. And then, of course, we have the two that we just introduced, which are splash proof. So again, these can be in a little bit more of a rugged environment. In all of these products, actually 3 of these products have a 1-year user replaceable battery. The CO2 logger, that actually has a 6-month battery life when you're recording at 5 minutes. The CO2 sensor is just a little more power hungry, and it uses 4 AA batteries. So just keep that in mind. but you have the flexibility of not having to be plugged into the wall. So, you can really move that CO2 logger around and use it in a bunch of different applications, during that 6-month time frame. And again, those batteries are replaceable as well. Looking at this series here, this is what we call our 2300 series, and they mainly measure temperature and relative humidity. Some of them have a couple temperature probes on them. Some of them have the sensors that are built in. Some of them only have one temperature probe. Another has a temperature and relative humidity probe. But I bring this up because a lot of times people are going to need an outdoor measurement to compare to inside. So these loggers are weatherproof. These are the loggers that the U.S. Forest Service, the USGS are using for environmental studies outside. There's something called a solar radiation shield, which helps protect the sensors from direct sunlight. When you get in your car on a hot summer day and it's like 150 some odd degrees in there, having that solar radiation shield will make sure that sensor doesn't overheat just due to the sun, blazing down on it. These loggers do have a bit of a longer battery life because they do use a half AA lithium battery. And depending upon how you set it up, you can have a 2 to 5 year battery life. So if you're definitely in some more rugged environments where, I know that some folks had signed up from remediation and mold and applications like that are maybe a little more rugged. You might want to consider, looking at this product line with the different options here. I wanted to highlight two of our waterproof loggers called the Pendants. Really what you got here, especially if you're doing temperature measurements, you have a low-cost logger that has a user replaceable battery that's good for about 1 to 2 years. It's rugged. You can put the thing just about anywhere. It's rated up to 100 feet underneath the water. It's going to store 98,000 measurements for you. Now, no, you can't communicate through water to your mobile device. Actually, I've got it to work for about 4 to 6 inches. So, if this did happen to be underwater, you would have to pull it back up underwater, out of the water. But again, I wanted to highlight these. And then the light sensor that we're using in the 1104 is the same sensor that we're using in the Pendant, the MX2202 here. And so again, it's another alternative here for you. I wanted to make you aware of them. We see these loggers being used in just a ton of applications, a lot of times mainly due to the price, because the price points are so low. Now let's talk about the gateway. The gateway is going to allow you to get the data from your Bluetooth loggers out to the web. The gateway uses Ethernet or Wi-Fi. The gateway does need to be plugged into AC power, or if you're using Ethernet and you have power over Ethernet available to you, you can power it through that. In terms of the network and what it looks like, it's a star network. So all of the loggers need to be within that 100-foot radius, which equates to roughly 31,000 square feet. You'll have to take things into account, like things like going through brick walls or how thick some of the walls are, how many walls you're going through, and all those sorts of things along those lines. So, and a question had come in earlier regarding this and in terms of, flexibility. So you do need to start and configure the loggers with your mobile device when you're working with the gateway. What I have done and what I typically recommend is that you put the logger into a wrap mode. So basically it's going to overwrite the oldest data, and basically that logger is going to keep running for you. with the data being uploaded through the gateway up into HOBOlink. Now, of course, you can go out there and stop the logger and restart it, if you don't want to lose any of that recorded data that may have been there. But keep in mind, too, that you can set alerts through HOBOlink. So not only sensor alerts, but if you get a low battery alert, which is what I've been doing, for the loggers. I've got probably about 100 of these scattered around my house and outside in my yard and connected to the fire pit and to my garden and all over the place. And this one gateway is gathering all the information and stuff's coming in. So how it works, oops, there we go, is initially you're going to set up a HOBOlink account at HOBOlink.com. You're going to connect to your gateway, connect it to Wi-Fi or Ethernet. You're going to configure not only the loggers, but also the gateway. And what's happening there is that it's using your username and password to HOBOlink to say, okay, these are going to go into this account. You place your loggers within about 100 feet of the gateway, and then the measurements will start going up. Now, what happens if not all of my loggers can connect to one gateway? You do have the ability to use multiple gateways. You just use that same HOBOlink account, username and password. And basically, between the two gateways, they're able to send the information up between the loggers. Even if you have one logger that is actually in range of both gateways, HOBOlink figures it out up in the cloud and puts the appropriate data up there, so you're not getting duplicate data. Also using that password is you could create a separate HOBOlink account and have a whole separate series of loggers going to a separate gateway, and basically those two systems would be completely independent of each other because they're using different HOBOlink usernames and passwords. See what we got here. Now, this is kind of a quick look at what I've got going on at my house right now. I've got the gateway here called Shock the Monkey, good old Peter Gabriel song there. And as you can see, these are actually appropriate named. So I've got one in the tree out in the front yard, upstairs bathroom. The trees next to my neighbors have chickens, spare bedrooms, all these sort of places. And, over here, it's giving you what your last sensor reading was, as well as when those loggers were configured last. So some of them, I may not have set them up to work with a gateway, or they may have been here at the office and I never took them home. Some of the loggers may have stopped and not set information up. For example, that logger called Shells in the middle that's out on my deck hasn't set any information from January 11th, and I'll actually need to go out and take a look because I think a lot of those got blown off and the storm that we had around that time. So I'll need to see where that guy is. But this is the first view, sort of the dashboard view. And then from here, you have the ability to take advantage of the new dashboards. So what you see here at the top is a month's view worth of data. I'm looking at temperature data, mainly looking at my thermostats. That pink line is actually one that I have attached to my grill outside. So, as you can see, it's gotten kind of chilly here finally in January. But we have had a couple, really nice days. And then you can set up different widgets. So actually during the summertime, my daughter has me hook up one of the 2300 series, the weatherproof loggers with the temperature probe, and I put that into the pool. And so she logs in with her mobile device, and she wants to make sure that the bottom of the pool temperature is over 75 degrees. it's technology, man. That's what you can do nowadays. So it's kind of fun that you have that capability. Finally, there's always talk about, okay, we have our dashboards and all that sort of stuff, but what if I want to, get this data out and work with it and pull this into my own system, and do something else with the data? And we do have something that's called web services with an API, and it allows you to pull that from our server to your server. That's certainly something that you'll want to work with our tech support people. The only rest that I am familiar with is when I sleep at night, so I'm not the most technical guy when it comes to the APIs. And I believe we're going to be expanding these in the next couple of months to include something called JSON as well. So stay tuned there. So finally, we'll kind of wrap up with some questions here. And Philip, he had the one that jumped out to me. And really it was, where are these manufactured? We manufacture everything here on sunny Cape Cod. I am coming to you live from Bourne, Massachusetts. I am in a 40,000 square foot facility that has over 160 employees. We have roughly about 40 engineers. We have actually 2 shifts out on our manufacturing floor right now, where about half the company works out there. And then all of our sales reps, our tech support people, our customer service people, we're all here at this building in Bourne, Massachusetts, where everything is made. So we're really proud to be able to continue to do this. The company was started originally in 1981 on Cape Cod, actually, and has moved about 5 miles north into Bourne as we grew, and continue to grow. So it's nice to be able to say that yes, they are American made, and we do all of this ourselves, all of the development. So we are able to keep this going here. Now, yes, we do have a worldwide distribution network. So they are available worldwide, including Mexico. If you go onto our website, as well as our friends in Canada, there's a company called Hoskin Scientific. We've been working with them now for well over 20 years, and buying the products there. So definitely hit our website, and you can find a local distributor. If there's not one, you can buy direct from us as well. Let me open up this screen a little bit here and get into some of these. You guys got a lot of questions here. You said the gateway was AC powered. Is it using a converter? Yeah, it's a wall wart. There's a wall wart that plugs into it. So it's on about a 6-foot lead or so. I work for a restoration company. Does the product give the temperature and relative humidity for both the room and the dehumidifiers that they are set up in? Currently, we only have one measurement per logger in terms of temperature and humidity. So if you wanted to measure temperature and humidity in multiple locations, you will need to get multiple loggers, essentially. Yes, the webinar will be available afterwards. We'll be sending out a follow-up of this here. Matt had a question on the gateway, and I actually didn't touch on this. So the gateway, as I said before, it uses Wi-Fi or Ethernet. Now, one of the things that I did was I bought a local cellular hotspot. I went to Wi-Fi and got something cheap for, about $40, and it had like a plan that was 1 megabyte a month for about $10 a month, and basically connected that, synced that up through Wi-Fi, and it worked absolutely flawlessly. just to give you an idea from a data rate standpoint, I was using about 28 loggers that were recording every minute. And that I ended up using probably about half of the data plan that was there. So that's definitely something that you can certainly do. Philip, we do have a solution for water level. I didn't touch on it here, but I would certainly recommend calling in and talking to our sales reps or hitting our website. We have a lot of different options for water level, whether that's USB. We have a Bluetooth version of that as well as we have a remote station also. So definitely check those out there. So Jerry, would these enhance, questions keep coming in. Would these enhance me in a Midwest agricultural situation? I grow hundreds of acres of soybeans and corn. I wouldn't actually recommend this product line. We have another product line that's also been introduced in the last year, and it's called HOBOnet. And that particular product line, that's going to allow you to monitor a wide variety, a much larger section. These use the 900 megahertz. They can communicate upwards of 2,000 feet. So I would definitely take a look at that, but I will make sure that one of our sales reps follows up with you after this. We do not have anything that will read moisture levels at this point. I'm assuming you're doing, like wood or paper, or trying to dry that. We don't have that. It's something that I would like to add in there. I think we can probably easily do it with the DC voltage input, but we just don't have anything at this point. For folks that are looking for the energy measurements, an energy meter, if you're looking to do volts, amps, kilowatt hours, and power factor, we do have a solution. It is something called our EG4100 series, and that is an energy meter to itself. Again, we will follow up with some information on you, because I didn't cover that in this webinar here, mainly because we don't have it in the Bluetooth version. Let's see what else we got here. Is there a functional HOBOlink account that you can play around with? Let me check on that. I don't believe we have one set up, but I'd need to take a look there. Our tech support might have something there, so let me take a look at that. Scaling. So on the 4 to 20 milliamps and on the 0 to the DC voltage input, yes, you can absolutely change the scaling to engineering units. We've got a question here. Does with the 4 to 20 milliamps, would we be able to support something like a dissolved oxygen sensor in the future? It could potentially do that now. I guess it really depends upon what the output is and what the power requirements are for that particular sensor. Right now we don't have a battery pack for it, so we rely on AC power to power up the third-party sensors, that do require power. How accurate are the readings, temperature and humidity? It's plus or minus 0.2 degrees C or 0.4 degrees Fahrenheit, and the relative humidity is plus or minus 2.5%. Let's see what we got here. Paul had a question in terms of flexibility. Can you launch or relaunch through the cloud? No, we don't have the capabilities in the cloud. So the cloud is just basically all of the data is coming up and being collected to the cloud. If you needed to change a configuration or restart your logger, you would physically need to go to it and use the mobile app to do that. Noisy construction environments make it hard to hear the audible alarm on the MX1101. I am sure it is. It is certainly not going to be a bullhorn siren. We've looked at turning up the volume on that, but there's trade-offs. The more power that we apply to the beep, the more power it's going to use from the logger and the batteries. And if it's going to continue to beep over and over and over, you know, we had a scenario where I think a logger, because we experimented and the engineers tried different things and made it beep at a quicker rate. And it definitely does put a large power drain on the, on the battery itself, which is why we haven't really turned up the volume that much more. We're not going to 11, so. Do the loggers need to be recalibrated? So, depending upon your environment, for the most part, the temperature really doesn't, it maintains its accuracy. Exactly, John. But in terms of the relative humidity, that does drift over time. And so it's really going to depend upon, and it's under 1% a year. If you're working, let's say, in a perfect environment where, it's 70 degrees and like between 40 to 60% RH, you'll probably get 2 or 3 years where you'll want to, before you'll want to check that calibration. In harsher environments, you may need to do that sooner. Some of it does depend upon, your standard protocols. I do know that, some laboratories require a 6-month or a 1 year, check of the calibration. So. Wi-Fi versus Ethernet on the gateway, are there trade-offs between the two? Well, I guess the good news is that on the same unit, you have the ability to do both Wi-Fi and Ethernet. It really depends upon how far away from your router the gateway is. So, it all depends upon the Wi-Fi signal strength and all that sort of stuff. Ethernet is obviously going to be more reliable, but you've got to run wires at the end of the day. Ethernet is easier to set up, in my opinion, because you can use DHCP. However, you do have the ability to put a static IP address in there. Wi-Fi, you can select the network, but of course, you need to make sure that you type in the Wi-Fi password exactly right. And if you're like me, you usually type it in a couple times wrong because you fat finger it. Again, DHCP, that's how it comes out of the box. You plug it into the Ethernet and you're off and running. So that would be the easiest in. Yeah, exactly. So, or the signal strength becomes an issue. Exactly. So, all right. Well, it looks like I've got a couple minutes left here, and it appears that I've gotten the most of the questions. I see we still got about 50 all still out there, so feel free to hit me up. Let me go back up to the top here. See if I missed something up here. One of the things that I didn't do on this, and just because I was having some technical difficulties, is I didn't step you through the app itself. So you can go to our website. There are some how-to videos on the HOBO mobile page that will show you all the different interfaces on the mobile app. So if you want to take a look at that, please feel free to check that out online. Do we plan on having a count or a state logger in the Bluetooth format? There are no plans at this point. I would like to see something at some point, but no, that is unfortunately not on the roadmap right now. So you'll need to continue to try to do, if you're doing motor run times, doing that based upon amperages and based upon logging intervals and stuff like that. So we hope to be able to add something, but again, it's not in the works right now. All right, well, thank you for spending an hour with me here. I really appreciate it. I'll go through these again. If I did miss anything, I'll make a note to follow up with you. And for those of you who are asking for some of the other products that I didn't cover here, I will certainly have our sales reps follow up with you and get you the appropriate product information. So thank you again. These loggers are available and are shipping. And as I said, stay tuned for the new HOBO Connect app coming out on February 4th. So enjoy the rest of your day. Appreciate the time, and bye.